Hi, everybody. We had a lot of technical difficulties today, so I couldn't get this to work. So I hopped over to, I couldn't get YouTube to work either. So I just had to, I jumped into Instagram Live in the hope that that at least would be one platform. And I'm hoping those who did join me in Instagram will come over here now. So pardon the delay, but that's what happened. So yeah, it's been a crazy half hour trying to get into Restream. I couldn't come in, but I'm hoping now that this is alerting everybody that I'm here. And for those who have been waiting, forgive me, but yeah, it couldn't sync. I had to restart my whole computer. That seems to have helped it and changed it. I couldn't get it into YouTube Live, which I also was trying to do. Let me move it over to my good microphone. All right. So anyway, better late than never. So here I am. Anyway, just want to say thanks to those who joined us quick in the Instagram Live, because that was the only place I was able to get to via my phone, which was the quickest thing I could get into, just to at least try to tell people, that I was here, but that it just wasn't working. So, whew, that was a lot of technology for a girl who doesn't really love technology. Okay. Bottom line is, I'm Kim Ann Kurt, the Wall Street Coach. I do these almost every Tuesday to support the trading community. I prefer to take a guest into this room and coach them live. So if you do have a camera and you're in a position to come in, please raise your hand and let me know. And I will bring you in to do the coaching. You can, of course, ask your question in the chat box, but some people, I think, honestly, it's better to get it live. So I'm going to put the guest link in the chat box. Hi, Liz. I'm so glad you're here. I don't know if I mean, yes, I can be pretty busy, but today it was not busy. It was just trying to get in the damn Restream and it just wasn't working. In fact, the Restream, one of the tech guys was trying to help me. He was telling me to come in on another, what do you call that? Platform like Safari instead of Chrome. I usually use Chrome, but nothing was working. Then I just realized, oh my God, maybe I just have to restart my computer, which is the case. So anywho, so Kim Ann Kurt is my name, the Wall Street Coach. I do this almost every Tuesday to support traders. And then I'm going to mix it up. I think I've been trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. And I think I'm going to still keep Tuesdays, try to do it closer to market close when I can. And then I'm going to also now, I think, do an X Space, a live X Space on Thursdays. I did it on a Friday a couple times. Doesn't seem that many participants. You were there, Liz, of course, but I think Fridays are tricky because that's usually the start of the weekend for a lot of people. So I think I'm going to do Tuesdays here through Restream, which goes on a lot of platforms. And then I'm going to go to X Space on Thursdays because some people, I think, are just on X. So, hey, Carson, I'm glad you're here too. So good to see you. So if anybody wants to come in on camera, that is my request. There is the link. You can see I just posted it, Studio Restream. Carson, feel free to come in if you do want to. And Liz, of course, you too. But if, I know you guys did some coaching with me recently. So if other participants show the interest in coming into the coaching, I'll ask that you let them go first, just so everybody gets a shot. There's also 35 participants here right now. So one of the things Angela pointed out to me is that what I'm seeing by way of the count is across all the platforms, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and Instagram. So that's 5 platforms. So when you guys hear me say, oh, there's 100, 200 people here, that's what I'm seeing. But if you're watching through YouTube or whatever platform, I think what you guys see is a different number based on how many participants are coming in from the platform you're viewing it on. So anyway, I'm just glad she told me that because I don't want, you guys think I'm exaggerating the numbers or something. I'm not doing that. So she's like, yeah, that number you say, Kim, isn't what I see. I was like, what do you see? It was totally different. So anyway, next, I want to just thank our sponsor, Centerpoint, for this being for this happening. And in fact, I want to put up for you guys uh, the link to their special offer. So I'm trying to find that now, but I just had to close down my whole computer and I don't have it immediately handy. So let me go find that. But I know I have it up on my last live. So anyway, I'll tell you guys, it's just all this is life though, right? Right? This is life. Life is messy, it's unpredictable, as is trading, right? And this is what you guys have to remember at all times. This is what we're all enduring all the time. So hopefully it gives you an opportunity to actually consider how do you handle things like this when they go pear-shaped, when things don't go the way you thought they would. How do you handle it? What happens to you? Do you get totally triggered? Do you get really upset and angry? This is part of what's so important, especially for traders, to start to build up more resilience because that resilience is going to be required of you over and over and over again. And what I want you guys to get is that the more resilient you become, it will absolutely assist you in your trading, but it also will assist you in your life. And that is pretty freaking important. And I really hope you guys consider how do you set it up for you to be more resilient than ever before. So there's the link to Centerpoint. Thank you, Centerpoint, for sponsoring this today. Please check them out. And because I know this doesn't always work on the live restream for the people who are on X, I'm going to go into X right now and I'm going to attach this link to Centerpoint in the comments here. Yeah, so let me just post that up. Thank you. And check them out, guys, and see if they are for you because their customer service is just, again, I've said this a bunch of times, above anybody else you've ever experienced. So I know you'll like them. All right. So we have Jess who says, thank you again for your help last week. I'm here to just listen and learn today, but I would like to know how the week goes next Tuesday. Jess, I am so glad you're here, and I'm so glad that that it was helpful last week. And I also just want to acknowledge you, Jess, because you sent me the video of that adventure that you took and pushed yourself beyond your comfort zone. And I just want to applaud you for that because what that indicates, again, is a development of your resilience. And that is so important. So, Jess, I don't know if it's okay. You tell me if it's okay for me to share. But what I want to just say is like she took on something that she was not comfortable with to allow herself to get exposed to this thing that was so intimidating for her. And at the end of this, experience, she felt completely different about her relationship to that situation. And that was because she got herself literally exposed to it. And that's what I want you guys to think about. It's like exposure therapy. We show our body's like, you're going to die, right? That's the short cliff note version of what our body all says to us when we experience discomfort. The key and emotional maturity and emotional intelligence is learning how to navigate that when it happens, how to let that feeling kind of come up, rage through you, and not surrender to it and not feel like you have to escape it. You don't have to, if you can't stay there for very long when they're very overwhelming, then stay with it for 10 or 20 seconds, guys. And then you can back out. Nobody wants you to go to tilt. Tilt is what happens to pinball game machines, like the old fashioned kind in an arcade. If you jiggled it around and banged the glass and hopped it up and down, which people used to do, pinball players, because they were trying to get the ball before it hit and went through the, two clickers. You got to realize that the machine back then would actually shut down for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it was. I don't know. There's a standard tilt pause, but the machine would stop because you had to overstimulate the machine. So when I advocate this about you guys being with your emotions, I'm not advocating you take yourself to tilt, but what I'm saying is if you don't start to expose yourself to the discomfort and stretch yourself and make those emotional muscles start to see you can handle it, then you will forever be at the mercy of the discomfort. And that is not a powerful place to be. All right, Tina, good to have you here. I'm glad you're here. Good. I'm glad, Jess, that you were willing to let us share that. What else did I want to speak to today? So what I started to say in Instagram Live, because I had technical difficulties today. I think it was my computer needing to have a shutdown. It needed to probably restart. I couldn't get into Restream. Then I couldn't get into YouTube Live. So I went to my phone and did Instagram Live. But that's what I did. So that's where I was, guys. If you were looking for me, that's where I was. So what else did I want to speak to? I was starting to say on Instagram Live, and again, remember, I'm seeing a higher count than you guys are because I'm seeing across 5 platforms. Yeah, 5 platforms: Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. So I think I can see everybody's questions, although I'm not positive I see questions that come in through Instagram. I think I see questions that come in through X and YouTube and maybe LinkedIn. And I don't know about Facebook. So if anybody is on those platforms, please ask a question so I can see. All right. Stephanie says, I went on tilt after dealing with feelings, LOL, but it's working out now. Look, Stephanie, it's good to have you here. It feels like tilt in the beginning, like on a lot of fronts. When you start to let yourself feel, it can feel very uncomfortable. It can start to make you feel like, whoa, this is so hard to be with. But remember, discomfort isn't necessarily tilt. Tilt can occur if you stay with exposure to a feeling or feelings. It can happen quickly if you're not used to it. And that's part of what I want to say to you guys. You don't teach a kid how to swim by throwing them in the deep end of the pool. You get them in the kiddie pool. You start to teach them how to swim, how to hold their, breath underwater. You gradually expose them, and the whole time they're scared. Each thing they try is scary to them. But to just throw them in the deep end of the pool and tell them to fend for themselves, like you wouldn't do that to a kid. So why do you do that to yourself? If you're a person who's not very comfortable feeling your feelings, if you're a person who's not really learned how to navigate a lot of emotions, if you only feel like you have 1 or 2 emotions or just a couple that you're comfortable expressing, or not even comfortable, but just tolerate expressing, then you don't want to be cruel to yourself and, just force yourself into an experience. It's not a really beautiful, gentle, kind way to do it. All right. So, Stephanie, I worked it out over a few weeks since we talked. Good, Stephanie. I'm really glad. But, Stephanie, just friendly reminder, because our time that we did spend together here, remember that you don't have to do it by yourself. Okay, Stephanie, I don't know if coaching is for you or not. I'm going to recommend you consider it. But even if it isn't me, another coach, like you guys have some kind of like belief you got to do it all by yourselves. It's just not healthy. All of us need support. All of us need an outside voice. Yes, it has to be somebody trustworthy. Yes, it shouldn't just be anybody. You don't want to throw your pearls before the swine, but I want everybody to get clear that this concept of grind it out, it's sometimes not fully described properly. To just grind it out by yourself when you could ask for help is not a good use of your time, guys. And it just doesn't feel as good. Like, we don't heal in isolation, guys. We get wounded in community and we heal in community. So if those who are listening are trying to get through stuff by themselves, I want to say, knock it off. I want to say, suck it up and go ask for help. Ask for or go seek out a person who you resonate with, a person you vibe with, and work with them, whether it's a coach or it's a therapist or it's a good friend or it's an older person who has wisdom, life experience. Don't just have that lone wolf thing, Stephanie. You're gonna have to let it go at some point. It's not gonna help you get to what goals you set for yourself. That lone wolf is an understandable response to not being able to count on people when we're kids. I get it. Nobody's more of a lone wolf than me, sister, but I know that that is cutting my nose off to spite my face. And I have worked really, really, really hard on myself to speak specifically to this issue within myself. So I ask for help all the time. I ask for so much help from friends, from colleagues. I have worked with the best coaches, the most expensive coaches I had no business hiring because they were so expensive. I hired the best of the best of the best for over 30 years, guys. And it has made all the difference. All the difference. So consider letting go of that whole lone wolf approach, because I'm promising you, it isn't going to get you to the promised land. It might feel safe initially, it might feel good initially, but it is not going to actually heal you. You have to do that in connection with another human being, if not multiple human beings. You can be picky as hell, but you're gonna have to pick some to do the healing work with. So do that to move the process along, because unless that heart within us heals, unless that wound within us starts to find out that being vulnerable isn't the enemy. Right now, it's possible some of you think being vulnerable is the enemy. And I can appreciate that. Believe me, I get it. But I promise you guys, it isn't your vulnerability that's the enemy. What's the enemy is the fact that you had to shut down from help way back when. And the reason you guys all did that is because somewhere something happened, probably long time ago in your childhood, that you weren't safe to ask for help. But what you guys got to get is that that was then and this is now. And you're taking your past and you're projecting it into your future. And that is going to have you keep loop de loop de loop de loop the same experience you had back then. If you don't want to keep living the same old, you got to mix it up. And the way you mix it up is to stop doing what you've always done. Because if that was the solution, guys, you would be at the solution. You would have freedom. You would feel more peace. You would not keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And the only reason you keep making them is because you're focused on the symptoms and not the cause. And the cause is the wounding. The cause is what initially not just happened to you, but what you told yourself about what happened to you. That is the heart of the matter. And that cannot just be healed in isolation with books by yourself. It's a great way to start, but ultimately, you're going to have to do the work on the heart of yourself. The heart is having to be in connection with another. So don't kid yourself that you can do it any other way, because you can. That's the bottom line. All right. So tell me, with our handful of people here in, if you guys have anybody who wants to volunteer for coaching. All right. I'm going to send, I probably sent it already. But if anybody wants to come in on camera to do some live coaching, there is the link. We have 84 people in the room. And again, my understanding is if you guys are watching in YouTube, you don't see 84 people. I see that because that's that number is always changing, because I'm seeing all 5 platforms: Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and Instagram. So I am seeing all people that are watching us from all of these different platforms right now. So if and only if you are comfortable coming in to have some coaching, then please come in, because these are obviously way more effective when people come in to do the live coaching. It's just so much better. Liz, understood. Let's just double check first, because I did just host you last week, Liz. I want to take you again, and I appreciate you volunteering. Carson, do you want to come in? Stephanie, do you want to come in? And if they don't want to come in, Liz, then we'll have you come in. If you guys do want to come in, you just have to grab the host thing and come into the room quick. You don't have to tell me. Just grab it. You guys can see that there in the thread. But thank you, Liz. I'm glad you're willing to come in if they don't come in. I'm just looking here for some documents. Dang it. So I'm not sure, Carson or Stephanie, if you guys are going to come in. If you don't come in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to just suggest Liz come in. So yeah, kind of whoever grabs that link first, may the best man win. All right, let's see who's coming in. I don't have anything this week. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, come on in, Carson. Yep. Well, Liz, we'll have you come in after. Stephanie says she doesn't have anything this week. She's still working on stuff. So, Carson, why don't you come in? Just please come in on camera. And then after you, Carson, Liz, I'll take you if that works for you. All right. So you just have to click on that link. Perfect. Hi, Carson. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
Hold on, let me.
You got it.
There we go.
Okay. How are you? It's good to see you. Meet face to face.
Yeah, good to see you as well.
So how's it going?
Going well ever since we talked last time, with the whole letting feelings come in and being able to understand that feeling and then kind of work through that.
Yep.
I've made it a part of my day.
Okay. Would you be willing to share what that looks like first, for me to understand how you're doing it, and also just because it's good to, share that too?
Yeah, for sure. So if it's the same part of, like, your stomach, your upper stomach. So if I feel that throughout the trading day and I don't have the time to do it, I'll kind of make a note and make sure to visit it again in the evening.
Great.
And so I'll just kind of sit down and close my eyes like we did before, and just talk through like, okay, what was that feeling from earlier? I'll just think about where I was in the trading day, what was going on. And then also if that feeling comes on, I'll check if I'm in any positions, make sure I'm not breaking any rules or anything like that, and just kind of bring myself back home to make sure I'm not out of whack.
Yep.
And then I'll just sit through it in the evening. Or if it comes up in the morning, and I'll just close my eyes, like I said, and hope that feeling comes back. And then I'll just sit with it and try and understand it. I guess one of the experiences I had last week was fear.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it came down to. And that fear came from trading well and fearful of going back and making those mistakes that brought me on the Twitter stream last time. And so I kind of related that in my head. I was like, okay, well, I can work with this feeling and use it to my advantage instead of running from it, is work with fear and knowing that that's the feeling I'm going to have if I do go down that path and do the wrong things. And so kind of using that as a guardrail, that when I do feel that come up, know what that is going to actually feel like afterwards. If you do break a rule, take a wrong trade, revenge trade or anything, kind of using that fear as a friend instead of running from it and being like, oh, I don't want to feel that, I don't need that.
That's
So
awesome.
that's kind of how I approached it. I don't know if that's right. That's for you to tell me. But that was the most profound experience last week of when I had that feeling come up again.
Good. I'm so impressed that you've been able to like take it into a practice. That is huge, man. So well done. That is a massive shift in how to learn how to start developing that muscle strength, right? You're strengthening a muscle. It's a muscle that we just normally don't get taught to get strong. So everything you described sounds wonderful. The one place I just want to tweak is that it's tempting to want to think about the feeling, but the power is not in the thinking about the feeling, but the feeling of the feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, but that seems like it definitely challenging to separate the two.
Yep, because
I guess. So how would you go about that?
Yep. So all you want to do is just simply notice, oh, what happens is when we have an uncomfortable feeling, let's say in our belly, the ego, the mind part of us, the thinking part of us, who is, for the most part, feels or wants to be the boss of us. Like this driver in our head, the thinking side of us, the egoic side of us is talkative, right? Acts like it's the big man on campus, right? So it has a tendency to hijack the body, the feelings, the physicality, the nuance, the unconscious. Like, so let's say we have an uncomfortable feeling in our body and we're not used to it. We're not used to facing it, feeling it, being with it. So what happens, it's almost like we flip. The mind goes, oh, I got this. I'm going to think about this and come up with a plan.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like, a new driver learning how to drive. The passengers sometimes will be like, let me just get behind the wheel because you don't know what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. You're like, I guess you're just trying to problem solve all the time. And that feeling feels like a problem. So your brain automatically goes, all right, well, let's fix this problem.
That's exactly it. The uncomfortable feeling feels like a problem. That is the best description.
Okay, so if you're in the moment then and you're having that strange feeling and you try and sit with it, your brain kind of naturally wants to think pretty hard about it. So how do you go through that process, I guess, to eliminate the thinking? Like, is it a breathing exercise, or what would you say?
You can't eliminate the thinking, right? Because that's what
Right.
our brain does. But you can just simply notice, oh, there you are again, brain, trying to solve this with your intellect. You beautiful brain. We love our brains. It's so crafty, but it also has a tendency to want to be the boss of us all the time. And so it talks over the more quiet part of ourselves, which is the feeling part, the place below our neck. It is speaking to us too, but it doesn't use language. It uses sensations that are subtle. It uses beingness. But the brain is always about doing, thinking, action, action, action. The feeling side of us takes some time. It doesn't know what it's feeling. And you even called that strange feeling. I want to say it's not a strange feeling. It just feels like a strange right now because it's never had a second to show itself.
Right. That makes sense.
So it's not, it's, I would say, let's call it an unfamiliar feeling, or an intimidating feeling, or a feeling that I've never let myself have before feeling.
Yeah, that totally. Instead of calling it strange, just this is actually how I feel.
Right. That's why I like to call
it's actually reality. It's not strange.
Exactly. And it's closer to much more of a reality than not feeling it. Because what happens is most of the time when we have any kind of feelings that sometimes we would identify as unpleasant, we have a tendency to consider those unpleasant feelings somehow bad or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And because of those labels, when we label them bad or wrong, we have a tendency to make ourselves feel ashamed of them. We feel embarrassed for having them.
Wow, that's nuts. Because, yeah, your whole life, you're like, this feels terrible or this feels great, when in reality, they really shouldn't be labeled. That's just what it is.
Totally.
So you pretty much have to go back, 30 years of your life and say, okay, I got to really rewire some way my brain thinks towards these feelings.
I would say that your brain has been carefully taught by the culture to, think certain feelings are acceptable and certain ones aren't. And that being taught to all of us is pretty much global. This happens across the globe because if you think about a lot of organized religion, it too is making us feel ashamed for having feelings. How many deadly sins are there? The 7 deadly sins? That 5 of those are just feelings.
Yeah, it's been ingrained in us forever.
Yeah. So when we start to have those feelings after years, perhaps, of not allowing ourselves to have them, it can feel a little disorientating. And, Mr. On a boat all the time, it takes, when you get on a boat the first time, what did he say? Person has to develop their sea legs.
Right.
It's different balance that you have to have on a boat. And just like when you come off a boat for a long time, you go on land, and that can be a little bit disorientating.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So you'll have to give yourself a minute to adapt to the fact that this is going to feel a little kind of wonky, a little bit off. Like, ooh, what's this? What's this?
Yeah. Well, I think that's also the positive side of it too, though. And now that you realize that, okay, this is an off, like I said, strange earlier feeling in the beginning, because you have to know that, okay, this is something I need to visit, right? So that it's just the warning signal. And just over time, I guess that will become more natural. But in the beginning, like, I just started realizing this 2 weeks ago. So
Correct.
that's obviously going to take time. I mean, a
Totally.
lot of time.
A
You have to
lot
be
of time.
patient with it, but
You do.
it's better now than never.
Yep, be patient with yourself. And that's why I used the metaphor before of the pinball machine. And if nobody's ever played pinball on a real pinball machine, it might not land. But if you ever played pinball machine and you jack that machine up and down on the ground, it goes on tilt and shuts down for a particular period of time for it to, punish the pinball player, but also to let itself cool down the machine. And that's why I'm saying to everybody, when you start to let yourself be a feeler of your feelings, you don't want to take yourself to tilt. You want to take yourself just a couple of seconds over what is something you can endure. And then when you hit the wall and feel like, ooh, I can't feel this anymore, then you're going to back out gently. It's okay. You don't have to feel. You can't. None of us could feel all of the trapped, unfelt feelings that are inside of us for our whole life. We can't expect to feel them all in one fell swoop and survive.
Yeah, you'd implode for
Exactly.
sure.
So the body is smart, but the body is like, well, are you going to let us feel anything? So it's kind of like, I feel like, I think some two movies that are really good to watch with regards to this is Inside Out, which was that Pixar film that came out a few years
I
ago.
literally watched that last week.
Okay, good job. Good job. So what
It's a
did you
great
think?
movie. I
Was
loved it.
Wasn't
Yeah,
it
I
great?
felt like a little kid again, but it was great. It's an amazing movie, especially after we had talked the first time, and then it's amazing because it makes so much sense. It was so much more relatable after we had talked. I don't know if I would have related it as much,
Yep.
but
Yep.
yeah,
Good
that's a
Good
great
job.
movie.
And the second version just came out a couple of months ago. I don't know if it's online yet, but it's called Inside Out 2, where we meet Riley, I think is the character, right? She's just turned 14 or so. And now she has, anxiety is the newest emotion that's just shown up for her, and a few other ones. And, she's feeling a lot of feelings that are just like a teenager, like this explosion of emotion. And, her mother's trying to navigate and her father's like, what do we do with this? She's like a wild woman, but it
Yeah,
just goes to show you how feelings and emotions can just sometimes overwhelm us. And seeing a little teenage girl go through it, you're just like, maybe I could cut myself a little slack.
right. And then in the first movie, I think the aha moment was when you had like joy and sadness. They finally worked together, and realizing that it's okay to be, you don't have to be this person all the time that I
Exactly.
guess you sometimes portray yourself to be, right? But you
Exactly.
don't have to be that. Be whatever, you know, to a certain extent. Like let your feelings do the work. They're
Exactly.
trying to relate with you.
And let them just give them space to have or be what they're being. Like there are people today where I do think there is a little bit of a focus on like toxic positivity, where like if somebody's feeling blue or down or says I'm feeling depressed, or just if you're talking to a friend and they're like, yeah, I'm really down today, most people will try to cheer them up. It's
Yeah,
like,
you have to
well,
be empathetic with them and just if they're sad, it's okay. Just
maybe
be
they
for a while.
need to be sad. Maybe sad is an appropriate response based on all the needs that they didn't get met in the last day or two or three.
Yeah, and you're so, I guess within society you have so many things where people are just like, well, cover it up. You know, you shouldn't feel that way. Like you had said last time, people buy random things or go do things, or even nowadays, I mean, they have a pill for everything, right? So
Right.
even our general huge part of society, they're like, oh yeah, just take this and it'll mask it. It's like, well, that doesn't really help. So it's not like this problem or realization is getting easier. You know, it becomes harder and harder for people because there's more access to masks, where a mask really isn't the right way to do it.
Exactly. That's it. And that's, you know, one of the documentaries that I really love and I advocate men watch and women too, to understand what men are going through with the culture that they're kind of forced into, is a movie called The Mask You Live In.
I haven't heard of that one.
It's really good. It's a documentary about just how, indoctrinated boys are from a very young age. And there's a scene in the movie, Joe Erdman, a former football player and football coach, says the most dangerous day in a young boy's life is the day when he's told to be a man. Because nobody explains what that actually even fucking means.
Right. Yeah.
But what he does get really quick is that to show emotion isn't a man, according to the culture. And so boys are taught early on, if they show emotion, other than the two that are acceptable, right? Which is like, they're allowed to show anger, but that's basically the only one, then they're a pussy.
Yeah, and it's backwards because anger is like one of the worst ones. If you let that run your life, then that's a very tough way to go.
But I would argue that most men who do costly things when they're angry is because they actually haven't learned how to be with their anger. It's because men don't allow themselves to actually internally feel their anger, that what happens is they close their eyes to it, ignore the fact that they are angry until it hits a tipping point and it explodes out of them, costing themselves and often those around them or the society.
Yeah.
If you look at all of, the documentary shows us a whole bunch of news headlines of the young kids, boys who are shooting up the schools. Every single one of them were bullied and were made to feel ashamed for their feelings, period. And that is going to create a certain kind of response. Scott is saying, yeah, but at the same time, women or others are trying to tell us to be a woman with her emotions. Scott, I would agree that there are those out there who are probably telling you to be with your emotions. Here's the thing. Nobody can tell us how we're going to feel. Nobody, that was one of the comments that came in just now, Carson. Nobody has a right to tell us how we feel. But here's what we have to look at. And this is what I'm going to say, to you, Scott, but to just all guys listening. Part of what I think is happening is the culture currently is there's always these extremes we go to as a culture. So I think part of the issue is that there has been a cultural kind of slant that emotions have been feminized, as if feeling emotions is a feminine thing. And that lie is part of why a lot of guys don't allow themselves the full range of what are just human emotions.
I totally agree with that. But at the same time, it's also hard because you're in a society where so many people care what other people actually think. And if you don't care about that, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be selfish, in my opinion. Like, this is how I need to deal with this. And I really don't, if you're offended by how people react to that, the core people in your life will always be there for you. And I feel like you just have to adapt that, where who cares what society thinks, what the societal norm is. It's more important with what you're saying with being with it.
I think we have to realize, though, that when that concept of caring what other people think, right? Where does that come from? Ultimately, where that comes from is our human longing to have connection, right? So I would agree with you that we spend too much time worrying about what other people think, but I also want anybody who can relate to that to have more empathy for themselves, because the only reason any of us care what other people think is because we all know we can't live without connection.
Yeah.
And so if, as a man thinks, oh, well, I better not show emotion because then that might keep me from having connection. Well, what are we going to do? Get mad at that man? No, he's just trying to survive. He's just trying to live and have the most important thing all of us need, right? Why is solitary confinement the cruelest thing to do to a prisoner, to anybody? Because we can't survive in solitude. We can, but it's, unless we've done obviously some very deep work with ways to navigate that. But for the most, it's going to be really hard. We're built for connection. That's how we've survived. And in fact, one of the books, and a lot of books speak to this, and Darwin and his whole theory of, why we're at the top of the food chain. One of the books I'm reading now is called Survival of the Friendliest. And another book is called The Lost Teachings of Darwin. He was saying the reason we're at the top of the food chain isn't the survival of the fittest. It's because we work with each other. We connect with each other. We know how to be a contribution to one another. It's our ability to love that actually is why we're at the top of the food chain.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 100%.
But that's not what the world has taught us, or our educational system, or the way a lot of different businesses are run. That's not how they're running. And I think part of it is this frustration that people feel organically. So yes, it looks like, oh, well, you care what everybody thinks. Like, people make fun of people who post on Instagram all these pretty pictures. Like, I get it. It sets you up to feel like, oh, I don't have that great life they do. But ultimately, what are they looking for? They're just looking for somebody to see them. Because most of us don't feel seen every day. We don't feel like anybody really sees us, gets us, loves us.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We just want to be loved.
Just want to be loved.
Emotional creatures that need love.
That's it. It's so simplistic, but that is the heart of everything. And the same is true in trading, right? Why is it so hard, universally, with every trader, hard to cut a loss? Because they don't want to be wrong. Why would they not want to be wrong that badly?
Because people don't want to be rejected.
Right.
I guess if you relate it back to the love thing.
Exactly. Because every time they have to face that trade was a mistake, they potentially have to face they might not be enough.
Yeah, I guess that does relate to that. Yeah, at a deep level for sure. Because you have to unwire yourself to realize that that's just a market with no feelings. If it doesn't have feelings about you, you really shouldn't have feelings about it.
But you can't help it because you're feeling individual. You're a human being. So the key is, don't try to make yourself be the machine, because you'll never be the machine, but recognize, oh, I have equated my being fallible with my not being lovable. And they are not connected. I am lovable. I get to belong, even if I'm a fuck up, even if I'm human, even if I'm fallible, even if I'm 20 pounds overweight or 100 pounds underweight. I'm allowed to have love and belonging, even if I'm a man who feels my feelings, even if I'm a man who makes mistakes or a woman who makes mistakes. Even if I'm a trader who still makes errors.
You should be loved for who you are.
Correct.
That's all you have is you at the end of the day.
Correct. But when you grow up in any kind of household where perhaps your parents weren't treated that way, they did not have the ability to treat you that way. And so if they didn't treat you that way, and they in fact somehow withdrew their love and connection to you when you were this, that, or the other thing, then kids grow up believing something's wrong with them. We never think it's our parents when we're kids. When we're kids, we see it as something is wrong with me. If I was more of this or more of that, my parent would connect to me, would accept me, would love me. We always take the blame when we're kids, always, because it's just how we're built.
Right. Yeah, and everyone comes from a different path too. So everyone fights their own individual battle in some sort of way. So it's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
it all comes back to the feelings thing, is being able to understand that.
Totally. Just all it's about is realize everybody's in the same boat. Whether we have, $1 million penthouses or we're living on a park bench, everybody is here to get the memo that our worth isn't based on what we do. It's just a birthright. It's just a birthright.
Yeah.
But that takes some unwiring, takes some unhooking from old stories. Some of those stories the world has given us, Madison Avenue has given us, but some of the stories we've given to us, we've made up along the way.
Yeah, especially like you said, if it comes from your childhood and you get to a point where you're in, 20s, 30s, or 40s, well, however old you are, and you haven't dealt with that, there's some sort of narrative that you still hold on to that isn't exactly the truth, because you haven't actually done the digging of where that came from.
Exactly.
So yeah, a lot of people are living a story that may not be real.
You
So
betcha.
you figure out where it came from.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I mean, like when we had talked, it brought me right back to a memory from childhood, and it was like, wow, that was insane.
Are
You
you
know, so
comfortable? Are you comfortable sharing what that memory was? You don't have to.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
It was, let's see, I think 10 or 11, maybe 12 years old. And it was the first time I had to, I come from divorced parents, and I've always lived with my mom. She had full custody of me. It was the first time I actually stood up for myself against my dad. And it was a very aggressive conversation, didn't really go the right way. But it was the first time I really stood up for what I believed in against a parent, which is really hard. So yeah, it was that. And then that came down to where that feeling resonated from was disappointment. Because as a kid, you're disappointed because you're like, holy shit, I really have to deal with this. I have to talk up to a parent and tell them what I feel is right, and morally, and all sorts of things from there. And
Yep.
as a kid, that's a very, it comes down to, like I told you, I talked with my wife after, and she's like, yeah, because you strive on not disappointing, and that's where it comes from, that really. Because when you're severely disappointed by a parent, luckily I had an incredible mom, but the other side, we're all dealt with our own card in life. But that's where that ultimately came from.
Yep.
Was that disappointed feeling, and then that just carried with me, where it's like, oh, you as a kid you're disappointed, so you never want to relay that feeling to anyone else.
Yep.
Because you know what that feels like.
Yep.
So yeah, right, that was the first instance. Obviously throughout the rest of my life it continued, but the first cut is the deepest, right? And that's where that memory came back to.
Gotcha.
So that was an incredible experience.
Thank
really.
you for sharing that with me, and obviously everybody else here, because
I mean, I hope if anyone else deals with it, we all have our battles.
Definitely.
We're all dealt different cards in life, and you just have to deal with them the right way at some point.
But that wound, like you just said, each of us have that wound, often more than one wound. And the key is to be willing to go back into the original wound and learn how to let that heal and give ourselves what our parents weren't able to give us at the time for that wound.
Yeah.
That is the key. And the only way any of us can do that is to at least give ourselves the time and the space to be with what is alive in us now. Those the two questions I wanted to get to with regards to that practice that you're doing are the questions, what's happening now? And that is tuning into the feeling part of yourself, right? The place where it's showing up in your body somatically. And then the next question is, can I be with it?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
sometimes
enjoy
the answer is no. Sometimes your answer to, can I be with this? Hell no. No, can't be with this one today. I'm too freaking tired. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be with this one today. But then come back to it, put up on a shelf, and then come back to it another day.
Yeah. Don't let it hang. There's something good there.
Well, it'll be not good for a while. Like, I wouldn't want you to just kid yourself and say, oh, there's something good there. No, it's going to fucking feel like hell.
Yeah.
For maybe a while, because if it's a big dark place that you've never let yourself feel, it's going to take some time to feel it.
Right. But as far as how I say it's good is that you can't hide that feeling forever. So even though it sucks in the time and it's painful, but that's still good because you're clearing your conscious and your feelings up of something that just needs to be out there. So at the end of the day, it's good, but in the short time, it's painful and it sucks. But that's life in general. That's everything in life.
It is, but it's, we've been also encouraged to lock them up in the basements of our soul and, put a fancy carpet over it and then a good comfortable couch. And we just pretend like, oh, it's not, there's no nothing down there in the basement.
Yeah. Close the door, go lay on the couch, and you're like, yeah, that'll stay there. So whenever I want to open that door.
Exactly.
But this is a damn nice couch, and I'll watch the movie and forget about it all.
Exactly. And the key is just, again, getting a little bit of that tolerance built up over time, right? You're already teaching, rewiring your whole system to start to realize, oh, I can be with this hard to be with feeling. Oh, I can be with this discomfort. And each time you stay there, even for a minute or two, it shifts. Each time you let it stay a little longer, it starts to move and transform and dissipate. Just like a pot of boiling water, if it has vents, right, it doesn't blow the top off.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, ever since I read the that PDF, the 5 practices, I'm on my second time through now, but just it becomes, like you said, get curious about it, and I became extremely curious because that wasn't the first time I felt that feeling. It's common, and not just in trading, but in other areas of life, I felt that same thing come up. But now that learning how to deal with it better, like you just, don't let your dictator of a brain take over your feelings, kind of separate them. So it's an evolving door, but it's honestly fascinating because it's a whole part of yourself that you never even knew existed, and now you get to figure it out. So
exactly.
The curiosity part that you talk about definitely helps because we're curious beings naturally, so it's just something else to be curious about that you would never think of. You're like, oh, it's just a feeling, it's normal, everyone feels this, it'll go away eventually.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
To understand that you actually have to try and understand it and feel where it came from is fascinating.
I think it's fascinating too. And I think that attitude also facilitates us not being so impatient or uncomfortable with the internal side of ourselves, right? Know thyself, right? That's what we're always taught, just like how important it is to know thyself. But the only way we get to do that is if we can come and meet ourselves without a lot of judgment. And in my experience, treaters especially, heavy duty dose of self-judgment all the time.
Totally. I mean, why wouldn't you be? You're your own boss, your own employee all the time. So you're running your own little business, and it's natural to be that way. But until you figure it out and talk to someone like yourself and realize that it's normal. Everyone's dealing with the same thing, but here's a way to go about it and be patient and feel with what's going on. And
exactly. It's just,
it makes a little bit more sense.
I think it does too. But, it's also taken me all the years it's taken me to see this for myself. Like, I tried to outrun it myself a bunch of ways. It just didn't work. So I just kept looking until I found a solution. And then when I found this solution, I was like, oh, this actually works. What the hell? Why didn't I get this sooner? But it's made all the difference. It really, really, really has. So I'm just excited to see the journey unfold for you. And I am beyond grateful to you, Carson, that you're willing to come in today, because I know that this has helped countless people, countless treaters. So
I appreciate you putting this together and allowing me to come on for a second time. I know if there's other people out there, don't be scared. It's just a conversation.
Exactly. Good. Thank you for that advocacy. If you guys want to do a deeper dive, I'm going to give you the link to my Trader Positioning Index. And that link is here. And I'm going to put it up on X. I'm going to have to bring this to a close. But you feel like you have your homework, right? The 2 questions. What's happening now? Can I be with it?
Yeah.
Right. And the inquiry that I tweaked with, when you go to be with the feelings, you want to just notice, oh, I'm trying to think about my feelings. Let me go back, drop back into my body and feel the feelings.
Yeah. Right? That'll be the one that will take a little bit of work, but consciously thinking about that will help for sure.
Yeah. I like to use the phrase, take the metaphoric elevator back down. It's like a rogue elevator, just keeps wanting to go to the top floor. Nope, we're going to go into the basement.
I like that. That's a good one.
Good.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Send that elevator back down to the basement.
Right. That's like, oh, there it is again. I'm going to my thinking mind. Don't make it wrong. Just let yourself drop back down below your neck. Let me go back to the feeling and feel it, because we can't think our way out of our feelings. We have to feel our way out of our feelings.
Perfect.
Okay.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. Good.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for coming and for being here and for being so authentic. All right, guys. We're going to shut this down because I got sessions today, and I'm sending you all good juju. And I'm really grateful to you, Carson, for coming into this room, because I know there's so many people who are navigating so much of what you're navigating. And I thank you guys for all your comments. I'm sending you guys so much good juju. Be kind to yourselves out there. I am skipping this Thursdays. I'm going to do Thursday X Spaces now, but I'm skipping this Thursday. And I'm not going to do Friday either, because it's my birthday. And I'm going to go to Volcano National Park and take some time off. So thank you, Yogi Trader. I'm so glad you're here. What a great name. I love that, Yogi Trader. That's awesome. And yes, thanks to Carson. Please, if you guys can, go thank Carson, whether it's in these comments on X, whatever, wherever. Please be sure to acknowledge his willingness to come forward, because I know that what he's navigating is not something he's navigating by himself. Thank you, Ashwin. It's I'm excited to have my birthday this year. I've done a lot of work on myself this year, and I'm looking to celebrate myself for doing all that work and to just launch what will be hopefully a spectacular, exciting, wonderful new year. Carson, can't find your X account name here. Let's connect if you see this. Awesome. Thank you, Tina. That's great, Yogi Trader. Carson, if you're still here, I hope you see Yogi Trader. Of course, I know what your handle is, but I think it's I don't want to share that unless you want to share it. So I'm going to leave that in your hands, Carson, to do. So all right, I will see you guys next Tuesday. That'll be Labor Day. Also, we have Labor Day weekend this weekend. So you guys won't be trading on Monday. So I would say take Monday as a practice day to be with your heart, to be with emotions, and see what happens. There it is. Sale trades. Good. I'm glad you put it up, Carson. All right, everybody go hop into X and send Carson a high five, because what he just did for this whole community was epic, as all of those who volunteer and come in here and do this